So a lot of people tell me it's just about calories. But I want to ask you if a 200 calorie bowl of chips is the same as 200 calories of avocados. So yes, they're the same in calories, but the way that it impacts your body is completely different. A lot of people think the 80-20 is about cheating. So 20% is the cheat. I hate this
Is it
wording.
not? It's not about cheating.
Anyways, you shouldn't be using this word. Anyway, our palates are built to love the taste of food. However, we were fooled by the engineering side of food technology, where they know exactly what ingredient to include, whether it was processed ingredient, refined oils or sugars, or any of the additives. These are very well studied and engineered for us to be addicted to food and for us to enjoy it that much.
Today, I'm joined by Rebecca Labaki, the nutritionist behind Renutrify. Rebecca is an experienced nutritionist who also creates content around certain topics that are not heavily understood by people, including gut health, insulin resistance, PCOS, newly known as PMOS, and blood sugar management, and all the wellness trends that keep showing up in our feeds. What I appreciate about her approach is generally that it's not just factual, but also practical. It's about understanding your body, building better habits, and learning how and what to eat in the real world. So today, we're going to cut through the noise. Rebecca, welcome to the Weigh-In.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Rebecca, can you tell us a bit about yourself, what you do, and your background?
Yes, sure. So as you said, I'm a nutritionist. I have a specialty in clinical and public health, and then I went ahead and I did a specialty in diabetes. And that opened a lot of doors for me, because being specialized in diabetes/insulin resistance, it plays a big role in many other hormonal conditions, being PCOS, now known as PMOS. And then I obviously stemmed into gut health, because at the end of the day, it's a holistic approach. So we need to look into these two important parts, from blood sugar to gut health. And these together help me understand nutrition and help me help other individuals understand themselves better.
Interesting. Okay, so as a nutritionist, what do people come to you for? Is it mostly weight loss, or are there other factors at play or other objectives that people come to you with?
So mostly it comes with weight loss, but then when we're at the clinic and we're discovering and we're assessing the weight problem, we tend to find other issues, whether it was gut, blood sugar management, stress, unhealthy sleep architecture. And so initially they come with that chief complaint, but then once we start digging in, we look into a lot more.
Interesting. And from your experience and what you've seen with your clients, what's the number one obstacle to attaining a healthy weight?
The number one obstacle is assuming that eating less is going to help them lose weight. So a lot of the individuals that I see that are living with hormonal conditions or it was blood sugar management conditions come to me initially with a very low calorie intake. And so this is one of the biggest obstacles that I face, where I tell them less is not better. More eating is going to get you to lose the weight. So this is something that I do struggle with, and I do end up having a bit of a bicker, me and the patients together. Like, trust me, eating more is going to get you to lose the weight.
This is the most counter-conventional wisdom thing I've heard. So when you say eating more, are you talking about more in volume? So like eating more leafy greens and lettuce and less high caloric density foods? Or what exactly are you saying?
So when we talk about food, we talk about calories just as much as we talk about the macros. So they're both just as important. So once we look into the needs of the individual, how much they work out, we give them the calorie intake that they're in need of, but we also pay attention to the macros. Because the macros, meaning carbs, protein, fat, is what's going to help them recompose. So yes, volume matters, calorie intake matters, and the quality of the food that impacts both the gut health and the vitamins and minerals that gives them the energy to feel better.
Okay, interesting. So you mentioned a couple of things here. So let's zoom out and then double click back on this, which is what approaches or methods are there to losing weight, and which one do you recommend to your clients?
Okay, there are many methods. We've heard of a lot of trends, from 1 meal a day to the carnivore diet to all sorts of things. The detox juice cleanse also, that's still lingering for some reason. But there's no one method that fits one person. So I believe in looking into the rehabilitating the metabolism. And then from there, we look into, of course, calorie intake, then macros, and then the blood sugar management, in addition to, finally, gut health. So when I say gut health, I mean the quality of the food that they're taking. So it's not just you're on a 1,700 calorie diet and that's it, it stops there. There's so much more detail to it. But yes, of course, energy in, energy out is the basis of nutrition.
Okay, and let's talk about gut health and, elaborate a bit more on this. So what exactly is the relationship between the health of one's gut and then the foods that they eat or their energy levels throughout the day? I would love to know a bit more.
Yeah. So to make it simpler, when we say gut health, at the end of the day, it's basically your gut is from all the way from your mouth all the way down. so the whole digestive tract. But when we say gut health in the clinic, we're talking about the colon itself and the bacteria that are living there. So we have a group of bacteria, they're split into good and bad, just to simplify it. And so the more we eat foods that are nourishing the good bacteria, the healthier your gut, and the more we're eating foods that are ultra-processed, the Western diet approach, then we're messing with the bacteria and we're increasing the bad bacteria. So that's what we call dysbiosis, imbalance between the good and the bad. So once you have a good balance with the bacteria, once the good bacteria are outweighing the bad bacteria, this is where you see an impact on the skin, on the brain health, the mental health, the sleep, the blood sugar, the weight loss. So the environment over here in your gut is basically the most important culprit of health. So it all stems from there. That's where it is. So once your bacteria are happy and they're releasing or they're secreting the happy hormones or the happy digestive chemicals, that's when you're going to see it all impacting the rest of your body.
Interesting. So by the same token, not only does the gut and gut health impact weight loss and weight management, but also mental health and one's emotional state. Is that true?
Of course. So 80% of your immunity is in your brain, is in your gut, and there's basically a nerve that connects your gut to your brain. We call that the vagus nerve. And so the healthier your gut, the healthier your brain, and it's vice versa.
Interesting. Rebecca, so a client comes to you, okay? They tell you they just want to be healthy or they want to eat or live healthier. What do you recommend? What do you tell them to do? Where do they start?
That's where I start. So I look into everything from their blood tests to how their medical diagnosis, to any surgeries they've done before, family history, social history, they drink, they smoke, any of that. Their recall, how they're eating, their sleep architecture, their bowel movements, if they're constipated or not, their caffeine intake, and what time they're eating their caffeine. So once I look into each and one of these aspects or features, from there we decide, the patient and I, we sit together and we customize a plan that works for them while tackling every single red flag. So at the end of the day, it's about looking at the biology of the person, teaching them what that means, and then talking about the goals, whether it was weight loss or something else.
Interesting, but it seems like there's quite a lot of information here. There's quite a lot of factors at play. What if someone's new to this whole space and really just wants a very simple playbook about, I want to start eating healthier or being healthier. Where do I start? Do they really need to think about 1,001 things, or is there a simple 3-step playbook that you would give someone which would allow them to start working toward their goals?
There are the basics, but I don't like to generalize. I like to customize because it does differ from one patient to another. But there are the general advices, or the top 3. Sleep well. I mean, like before midnight, get your 7 to 8 hours of sleep if you can, if it's possible. Try to look for foods that are less processed. Try to lean more towards the Mediterranean diet. Don't have late dinners. Try not to go into the late night eating. So these are the basic 3 tips. Mm-hmm. But I like to give very specialized advice. And
which is amazing.
Advice.
That's awesome. You mentioned on some of your content on Instagram, you mentioned the 80-20 rule. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah. A lot of people think the 80-20 is about cheating. So 20% is the cheat meal. And I hate this
word.
Is
it not? It's not about cheating.
Anyways, you shouldn't be using this word anyways, the whole cheat meal, because it basically makes you feel like you have the right to indulge now, and when you don't, you have to be healthy and to the T, and that's what makes people basically relapse, so to speak, and so not continue and not sustain their diet. So the 80% is basically about giving your body all the nourishing ingredients that it needs in order for you to, when you have that 20%, when you have that cookie, you're not going into a systemic inflammation and you're just going back into square zero. So the 80 is building a base where you have all the nourishing foods, you're thinking about your gut health, you're thinking about your blood sugar and all of that. The 20%, which we all want to enjoy because going out is basically what we do in Lebanon. That's just here on its own. And that's what others also do, being out and being social. So we don't want to stop them from doing that. But we want a strong base so that once we have that good cookie, we're not just going back into square zero immediately.
Why is it, maybe on a bit of a tangent, why is it that all of the tastiest and most indulgent foods in the world, they're unhealthy? Why isn't it the case that our bodies just naturally learned to love healthy food and our taste palates developed to love the healthiest, most nutritious food? Why is that, do you think?
Our palates are built to love the tasty food. However, we were fooled by the engineering side of food technology, where they know exactly what ingredient to include, whether it was processed ingredient, refined oils or sugars, or any of the additives. These are very well studied and engineered for us to be addicted to food and for us to enjoy it that much. So each one of the ingredients that are included in the unhealthy foods are made for us, A, to increase the happy hormones, and B, for us to want more. And at the end of the day, if we think about ultra-processed food, let's think about a bag of crisps. Once we ingest it, it goes into our stomach very lightly. So it's not taking a lot of volume in our stomach. So we get hungry quickly. So that's in regards to the volume and how it is. Versus something fibrous. And when I say fibrous, I mean a bowl of salad. So the way the bowl of salad or a bowl of vegetables fills your stomach is super different from the way a bag of chips does. And also the impact that it does on blood sugar. So this can also be applied to the calorie concept. So a lot of people tell me it's just about calories. But I want to ask you if a 200 calorie bowl of chips is the same as 200 calories of avocados. So yes, they're the same in calories, but the way that it impacts your body is completely different. One is going to give you all the cellular rehabilitation and nourishment, and the other is going to just crash your energy and make you hungry later. So yeah, it's not all our fault.
Interesting. And this leans into something which I've heard you mention as well online, which is that not all calories are equal, right?
Exactly.
Very interesting. Rebecca, what are some common signs that someone should steer away from the traditional or conventional approaches to weight loss, like dieting or counting their calories, and go more towards looking into their hormones or gut health?
What I tend to see in the clinic is when they attempt to do the calorie deficit and they fail at it, or they just feel like their body is relapsing or plateauing, and as well as the symptoms. So if they feel like they have strong PMS, I mean like very moody before the period, brain fog, weight gain specifically on the belly, stubborn fat, periods that are messy, moodiness, all of this is where you have to question. It's not just about calories in and calories out. I need to look into the architecture of my gut, my blood sugar, my hormones, reproductive, insulin, all of that.
So let's talk about something else within the topic of cortisol and cortisol management. What happens when someone is under eating, they're over caffeinated, they're really trying to train hard, but they're sleeping poorly? What happens in their body, in their physiology?
I see this a lot in the clinic, and the chief complaint is my weight is plateauing. So when we're not built to overtrain and undereat, when we are in that state, our body is in a chronic stress state. Cortisol is good because when it increases, it's good when it's acute. It's good when it's on a short term. It gives you that adrenaline, that push. But when you're in a chronic stress state, and when cortisol is high for too long, this is when your body is going into protection mode. That means let's stop everything. Let's not focus on anything but keeping this individual alive. And not go, and they're thinking that we're in some famine state, we're in drought in the desert, and let's pull down the metabolism. Let's forget about the period, forget about the thyroid, forget about muscles, forget about everything. Just keep this person alive. And in today's world, we're not actually sitting in drought or in famine. We're just overtraining and undereating, but our body is reacting in a way that we are, so we don't see the results. And the first sign of this is weight plateau. When we're in a chronic stress state, we're not even thinking straight about what we want to eat because our insulin is also being messed. So cortisol and insulin can go up together. And what that means is my need for sugar, my cravings for sugar, and late night eating and improper choices will increase as soon as you're in a high chronic stress state. And you want to do all the unhealthy habits because of the biology behind it.
Interesting. And you've told me before that some of my habits, they increase or they spike my cortisol. For example, I like to, upon waking up, I go fast. I fast until midday. I don't have any food, no calorie intake. I drink lots of water. I drink lots of black coffee in those early hours of the morning. And you've kind of told me that that has an impact on my cortisol. So if someone were looking to manage their cortisol levels a bit more, even if it's not related to any specific objective, they just want to be in a bit better shape or they want to manage their cortisol levels, what recommendations would you give?
I'll tell you how I start my day and how that impacts my cortisol levels, and maybe this can inspire someone else. So it's all about calming the nervous system and not keeping up with today's world, whether it was with Instagram and waking up the first thing in the morning and scrolling through. Wake up in the morning. Try not to look at the screen. Try to go into these meditation apps or some sort of prayer that you do for the first 10 minutes. Calm your nervous system. Learn some breathing techniques. Go out and see the sun for a good 10, 15 minutes. Get in your water after you do the tongue scraping, oral health, taking care of all of that. Then comes water. After the water, you can get in a pinch of sea salt, Celtic salt, electrolytes, just to like calm the adrenal glands and calm your stress glands. And then it's breakfast, some sort of movement, and then coffee 30 minutes later. This on its own, as a morning routine, is one of the best for calming the cortisol. Then comes in the rest of the day where kind of when you're at work, we're all there, we're all in a fight or flight, we're all on the run, because that's how it is these days, is to just pause. If possible, give yourself 2 minutes of just breathing, calming your nervous system, and then getting back into today's world. And then obviously not late night eating. Because as I said, insulin and cortisol, they come together. If we're eating at night, so what happens is at night is when the sun goes down, melatonin goes up. And what is melatonin? It's a sleep hormone. Once the sleep hormone goes up, insulin comes down. So it's not that the apple changes in calories during the day versus at night, it's that your insulin doesn't work as well when the sun is down. And that when that happens, when the insulin is spiking and playing and not storing the fat where it should, it's actually storing it in the belly fat, then cortisol goes even higher.
This is super interesting. So you can eat the same foods during morning time or during the night, and it will have a different impact on your body, and it will do different things with the nutrients, and some might go towards fat. This is super interesting. Simply
because of insulin. So as soon as I said, as soon as melatonin goes up and insulin goes down, the sensitivity of insulin goes down. What I mean is the response of insulin to the carbohydrates, then that's where belly fat accumulation becomes higher and you're less active.
Interesting. So what would you recommend then? What should someone index on eating in the morning versus in the afternoon versus in the evening?
So I'm going to specify this advice to individuals living with PCOS. So it is recommended that these girls eat the majority of their calories, 60-70% of their calories before the sun sets, and to have a big breakfast or a 30-gram protein breakfast the first 90 minutes of waking up. Because after 6-7 p.m., when the sun sets, when the insulin goes down, then we're going to have a rush of cortisol, belly fat accumulation, cravings for more, and the cycle just keeps going on and on and on.
Interesting. What is PCOS? Can you tell us a bit more? And why is it recently known as PMOS?
Yes, so it was polycystic ovary syndrome, and that basically, by its name on its own, as if it's only focused on cysts. And the issue there is that only 25% of girls show any signs of cysts via the ultrasound. So doctor would usually do the ultrasound, there are no cysts, you're good to go. So this is why you're hearing more of PCOS, because there was misdiagnosis and now we're learning more about it. Today, it's called polyendocrine, so to do with hormones outside the reproductive hormones. Metabolic, to do with metabolism and cardiac health. Ovarian, obviously the ovaries are still involved, and syndrome, because it's not just one thing, it's a basket of features or symptoms. And so now we are getting better at diagnosing PCOS or PMOS because we're understanding that it's not just about the cysts. It could be simply symptoms of acne, hair, belly fat accumulation, cravings, inability to lose weight as easily as others. And that's when this is why we are happier, because now we're looking at not just the ovaries. In order for us to help individuals with PCOS, we have to look at them holistically and then pay attention to their cysts.
Interesting. And so if someone does have PMOS, what does this mean in terms of weight loss? What approach works for them? What are the conventional approaches which they should try and steer clear from?
Yeah. So we look into, when we talk about PMOS, we immediately talk about cortisol and insulin with it. Okay? And so we try to manage that, we try to eat in ways where we're managing their insulin levels through blood sugar management. We also try to control their workouts. So when an individual is living with PMOS, she should not be overtraining. She should not be doing high intensity interval training. She should not be leaving her workout out feeling like she's out of breath and overtraining and her veins are going to pop out. So there are certain features for these individuals where we just try to dampen that inflammation that PMOS does in their body. Okay, and then we go into supplements and the blood tests and all others.
Interesting. Okay. Zooming out a bit more, Rebecca. So let's talk about insulin spikes. We often hear online that you shouldn't spike your insulin. You shouldn't have carbs as the first part of your meal or first thing in the morning. Can you tell us a bit about insulin spikes and whether they really are all that bad, or whether there are different types of insulin spikes? Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. Let's understand what insulin is. So insulin is basically in charge of getting the sugar into the cells, right? So as soon as we eat carbohydrates, any source of carbohydrates, it is digested as sugar in our blood, and then insulin comes out from the pancreas and says, all right, it's time for all the sugars to go from the blood into the cells and to pack them up. So we need insulin. If anything, every time we eat carbs, we need the insulin to tidy them up and not stay in the blood. However, when we say spike as a rush of insulin, everything that goes up very quickly will crash down very quickly. And that's where the issue lies. If we are shocking our system with sugar first thing in the morning, sugar at the beginning of our meal, snacking randomly, a little bit, there are a lot of individuals that tell me, I don't eat meals, I just snack. That's the worst. I wake up and I open the fridge, I have a bar of chocolate, then 2 hours later I have a fruit, then 2 hours. So when we're doing that, what we're triggering is insulin is basically rushed to increase or to go up in levels. And so with time, when you keep triggering that insulin, then its response will be either too fast, too slow, too behind. And so that messes with A, cravings, and B, belly fat. And then you get stuck in that loop. So the reason why we care so much about insulin is because A, we need it to store our sugar. B, we need to be careful of how it's being secreted, because if we keep on triggering it and bothering it over time, we will see that its reaction to carbs will not be the way we want. And then the collateral damage is, why am I not being able to lose weight? Why is it stubborn on my belly? Why am I craving so much sugar and I can't control it? And why is it that I'm eating less than you and I'm gaining weight?
Yes, everyone is born very different, and different approaches work for different people.
Absolutely.
Is this also the reason why sometimes after a very carb-heavy dinner, you wake up the next morning feeling famished, feeling like you could eat a cow?
So if it's not applicable to everyone, but if already there's a predisposition for metabolic disorder, they're having a little bit of visceral fat, meaning fat around the organs, especially the pancreas, and they do end up building habits like that, where late night eating, eating heavy meals and heavy carb meals, because the insulin is a bit messy to start with, it was rushed to increase, and then there was a crash after that. You wake up in the morning, your blood sugar is so low that you just want to eat the whole fridge.
And we sometimes do.
Yeah, we sometimes do.
So let's talk about some myths, right? So there are many health and wellness myths going around. What's one health and wellness myth that just frustrates you beyond comparison?
Plant milks.
Plant milks. Tell us more.
So there was a whole trend of, let's stay away from the cow, let's stay away from anything that comes from animal dairy, and let's stick to plant milk. Sure, almond milk is great, coconut milk is great, but if we actually have the whole almond squeezed into almond milk versus the store-bought ones that are ultra-processed, I know you can sense my anger through my tone. When they are ultra-processed, that means they have 2% of almonds. Let's say almond milk is an example. It's 2% of almond and the rest is vegetable oil, which is very inflammatory. Water is makes up 90% of it. And then some xanthan gut-disrupting preservative. And so these individuals are all about, let's stay away from the cow dairy because it's causing us acne, and let's stick to the store-bought plant milks, and this is actually doing a lot more gut-disrupting impacts than the cow dairy does.
Interesting. And a bit of a different topic here. So I would love to know your perspective on training in general. So we've been talking about nutrition, we've been talking about gut health and hormones. How does all of this fit in with any form of training?
The most important thing is peri-workout fueling. So the type of the workout matters, of course, where you are metabolically. It really matters that you're not spiking that inflammation through high-intensity interval training, and then peri-workout fueling. And what I mean by that is basically eating the right things before and eating the right things after in order to fuel muscle recovery, muscle growth, and for you to be able to get to your goals. So pre-workout ideas would be fast sugars 2 to 4 hours before, even 30 minutes before if feasible. And then the post-workout is very important. A lot of people tend to tell me, I tend to take the post-workout purely protein. Post-workout needs to be both protein and carbs together. Carbohydrates are going to be storing glycogen, which glycogen is stored in the muscle, and that's going to give you that pumpness. So within the first hour of finishing your workout, that's when your muscles are warmest to absorb those nutrients, and a combination of both protein and carbs when it comes to workouts.
Rebecca, we obviously also hear a lot about protein online, and everyone's obsessed with hyperproteination or whatever the term is. So let's say someone is new to this space, someone who's new to tracking their nutrition, or someone who wants to start to learn more and get a bit more of that education on it. Where can someone start?
So what I've been doing in my clinic, because of the whole advancements with AI, is taking advantage of the fact that it exists. And so at first, when I tell my patient macros, they're like, this is Chinese to me. What is macros? What are proteins even, and what are fats? And so what I tend to do is I give them an application called Journable. And Journable is basically an AI-generated calorie counter. And my patients just take pictures of the food, and then the macros of this food come up. And once I give them the target total daily needs, total daily calories, and total daily macros, and they set them up in Journable, and they start taking pictures of their meals, and they understand how much protein and carbs this meal is made up of, and am I actually reaching my total needs per day? This is when they start to understand it on their own. Because at the end of the day, a 1 hour consultation and seeing my patients every 2 weeks is not going to give them the full Nutrition 201 education package. And so this is helping me a lot, where they on their own are seeing, oh, Rebecca, I never knew that I used to eat this little carbs, or I didn't know that this has this much protein and I was actually eating more than I need to. And so this is what helps them a lot.
Amazing. Yeah, we've seen this as well, that the educational aspect of it, just the simplicity of being able to understand what you're eating with just a couple taps or just taking a picture of your food goes a very, very long way, because as we both know, education plays a huge role in someone's ability to hit their goals, to lose weight, to manage their health better, and to do so sustainably as well. So amazing to hear that.
Thanks. And there's one more thing that it helps them with. So at the end of the day, the dietitian is going to give them 6-7 options of meals, right? But then where's the flexibility in that? And I'm invited to my friend's birthday. What do I eat then if there's no sourdough, avocado, and eggs for breakfast? And so what I do with Journable is that, okay, I gave you how much calories and macros you need, not only per day, but per meal. And so once you're out and about, you just take pictures of your meals and you can ask Journable to prepare for you a meal that's made up of these macros and these calories. And so this offers more flexibility to the individual.
Amazing. Love it.
Love it.
Thanks for sharing that. Rebecca, I want to move on to what we call the protocol, which is the section of the podcast where we learn a bit more about you, your habits, your perspective and opinion on a couple of things. And the first question I have for you is, what is your morning routine, the first 60 to 90 minutes, no filter?
So because I'm living with PMOS, I need to be careful about calming my nervous system in the morning. So as I mentioned, I wake up in the morning. I try not to look at my screen. Sometimes we're human. Sometimes all I do is grab onto my phone and continue working and answer my voice notes and answer my WhatsApps. I try not to do that as much as possible. So I keep my phone away from me. I try to meditate / pray a little bit, go out in the sun, see my dog, walk around with him, take my 2 Brazil nuts for my thyroid health. Then I go and, before that, I take care of my oral health. And by that, I mean I do some tongue scraping, oil pulling, brushing my teeth. Then comes the water intake. With the water, I could be taking either a pinch of salt on my tongue or a Celtic salt or sea salt on my tongue, or even electrolytes. Then the Brazil nuts. Then the walk outside in the sun with the dog. And then some breakfast. After breakfast with 30 minutes to stop any of the caffeine impacting my iron absorption from my food, I have my matcha. And if I have my matcha, I make sure to have it with 100% monk fruit that doesn't spike my blood sugar, 100% almond milk, dash of 100% pure vanilla extract, and I'm ready to go for the rest of the day.
So, Rebecca, what is, in your opinion, the most overrated thing in health and fitness right now?
Oversupplementing. Nobody should be taking more supplements than they're taking nutrients from their meals. So supplements are complementary to our food, and the way that we ingest the supplements and what they do in our body and how they're being disseminated in our body is super different from food itself. Food comes with fibers, with more vitamins, with more minerals. And so over-supplementing, especially with individuals living with PMOS, it's everywhere. Take myonosol, take berberine, take chromium, and then you see them with like polypharmacy with millions of supplements that are probably redundant to their health. And they could be taking so many supplements, but their foods are so wrong and they're just contradicting themselves. So I think with this, especially customizing supplements to a person's need is so important, and not just to take it because someone else told me online to take it.
Yeah, very interesting. And the converse of this question, so what's the most underrated thing in health and fitness?
10-minute walks. So you're seeing a lot of individuals now online. I'm seeing a lot of individuals online just doing calf races after meals. And so our calves are like our second heart. They're the most sugar absorbing muscle in the body. And so the reason why we say, please walk 10 minutes after, or please do some calf races after a meal, it's because it basically stabilizes the blood sugar. It doesn't shock your body with the flow of sugar. Instead, it goes to your calves, calms your digestion. Anyways, you feel better and lighter when you sit down 10 minutes later instead of going to bed right after. And so, yeah, please walk 10 minutes after. It's just 10 minutes. And it can basically mean it doesn't have to be all about wearing your running shoes and going out for a walk. You could just simply go around and do the dishes and do some errands around the house. And that's just 10 minutes on your feet and you're good to go.
Just some movement.
Just some movement.
Movement after a meal, which is countercultural to what we have here in the Mediterranean culture, where you just sit down for hours on end after a meal, scratch your belly.
Yeah, I see it a lot. I see it at home. I'm done with lunch. Nobody bother me. It's time for bed. It's my siesta time.
You mentioned that the calves are the second brain.
Yes. Yeah.
What
Second heart.
Second heart. Yeah,
Yeah.
you mentioned that the calves were the second heart. What did you mean by that exactly?
They're the largest, one of the largest muscles, and the most sugar absorbing muscle in the body.
The calves absorb the most sugar?
Yes, and they pump a lot of blood in your body.
Really?
Yep.
So if I wanted to grow my calves, I should eat lots of sugar? Is that,
That's
how
not
it
the way it
works?
works. That's not the way it works. The way to grow your calves is to do lower workout and doing the post-workout feeling right after.
That's good to know. Rebecca, what's the best advice spreading online at the moment?
Right now is the fact that PCOS changed its name to PMOS. And so I'm loving this. I'm loving the trend. I'm loving how aware people are being, and they're understanding more and more that I don't need to go into just an ultrasound, and if I don't have cysts, it stops there. Because I'm seeing that a lot, because after that, there's a nice lingering of 5 years of PMOS playing in their body, and then it's, Rebecca, please save me. I'm not feeling good. My weight is plateauing. So the best thing that's happening for the past 2 weeks is that individuals are starting to understand, these girls are starting to understand that it's not just about your cysts and your ovaries.
Awesome. Your answer to the previous question about morning routine was quite spot on, right? It seems like everything goes very, very smoothly, but we're human, right? And we have guilty pleasures. What's yours?
Having a nice glass of wine with my family. There is zero benefits to alcohol. Not one dot of alcohol does any good to your body. Forget this whole thing about wine and heart health. Zero benefits of alcohol. But this is my guilty pleasure because there's a lot of social aspect to it. There's a lot of love behind it. There's a lot of just sitting in a community with your friends, with people that you love. And we do this often here in Lebanon. We go out for a drink, we go out for some good food. And so I wouldn't call it guilty pleasure because it's my 20%. So I make sure that I'm really taking care of my gut health 80% of the time. 80% of the time my foods are intact. I'm not eating ultra-processed food. I'm being careful. I'm reading ingredients. And not in a very fixated, obsessive way, but more of an awareness way. And so that 20% is good to go. So this is something I just wanted to let you know, that I know that we're human and my morning routine might seem like it's a bit robotic, but the way that I convince my patients to do something like this or to take care of themselves is by teaching them their biology. Because if I sit at the clinic and just tell them, do this and do that and just do it because I told you so, it's not going to get them anywhere. And so they're going to relapse eventually and not sustain it. So once I sit with the individual and I really genuinely sit and teach them the biology, the therapeutic education behind metabolism, what it means not to spike your blood sugar, what could happen if you do this, then they're more than happy to apply the tips and they sustain them.
Love it. Rebecca, just before we land, what's one thing you'd like to leave the audience with today?
I'd like to leave my audience, especially the ones living with insulin resistance, PCOS, metabolic disorders, to not blame themselves too much and not to think that this is a lack of discipline or a lack of willpower. Biology plays a big role in this. And so if you feel like your cravings are getting higher and your weight is just becoming more stubborn, don't blame yourself. Investigate the biology, and then we can talk about the rest.
Amazing. And how can the audience reach you or best connect with you if they'd like to?
So my Instagram is the easiest way to speak to me, Renutrify, re.nutrify. They can just shoot me a DM and I'll be more than happy to help them.
Rebecca, this was awesome. Thanks
It
for
really
coming
was.
on.
Thank you.